So I'll go ahead and close these things down here and open up my ODBC sample subdirectory, and you see this default.inf. If I go ahead and just double click that, we'll kind of open this up so that you can kind of see the detail that was created in here. So it says default is default, okay, and if you have a server list in here, keep in mind that this value right here must be specified. These guys got to match, okay? And my data source is obviously default again. My user ID is TDO. It encrypts up a password here, so it's not a good idea to try to go through and change user IDs without changing the password, because the encryption set takes care of all of that for you. So if you have another user, you're going to want to use that utility again and specify a user ID for another user and specify a password. The access mode is read and write. Of course, the commit mode is manual. Concurrency is, it says read only. You can change this part to read write or any other thing that you have here. Again, if you want to go through and modify this, you can do it here, or if I wanted to come back here to the utility, I can just go ahead and open this up and browse for my particular database here. So see, let's see, data samples, and I can browse for it here, and ODBC default, and say OK. And again, notice it comes back here to default and picks all of that stuff up. Again, I want read write as the access mode, manual, so everything looks like it's correct. So I'll just go ahead and say OK. So we have an ODBC INF file, we have our database established, we have our ODBC data source established. Now there's only one other thing here that's really important, is you have to tell the program to use this default.inf. So I recognize that this is a little bit of a protracted process for you to go through, but trust me, you know, I tried to break it down as easily as I could. So I'm going to come up here and remember this D samples ODBC sample address here, the database directory or the project directory that I'm going to look for, and then I'm going to kind of drill down into ODBC sample, and I'm going to go down into my bin and debug. And notice I've got my COBOL 85.cbr file here, and I've got my ODBC sample.executable and my PDB file, which again is my program debug database. I'm going to go ahead and open up this COBOL 85.cbr file, and again, you'll see this at ODBC INF equals. What it's actually looking for is the actual physical location for the INF file that I just created. So if I come up here and say edit and paste, it will give me the subdirectory. And again, if I come back here to my ODBC sample, you notice it's called default.inf. So it's important that we make the distinction here, default.inf, just like so. Now I'll go ahead and save this program, or save this file, and close it. Now my connections are all set up and everything should work properly. I should be able to go ahead and execute that program, and it should be able to resolve where the INF file is from the COBOL 85.cbr runtime file. It should be able to ascertain from the PDB file where my data source is. The data source itself that we created should be able to identify that it is an SQL Server database, and it should identify the specific database called class that we're going to be working with. So now that I've got all of that set up, and believe me, it takes a little while to sort through some of that stuff, we're ready to actually go ahead and start working with our COBOL program. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and set up a couple of breakpoints, and I'm going to do it right here on this display spaces, another one right here on display spaces, and another one here on display spaces. You'll understand why I break that right here in just a few moments. So let's go ahead and just do a build on it to make sure that everything is working correctly. And again, I'll hover over the output window, and it says, okay, it's 1 succeeded, up to date, 0 failed, 0 skipped. And if you'll recall, in the Server Explorer, I didn't have any tables associated with my class database. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start the debug process. So I'll go ahead and step over this, and it will start the process here at the procedure division like so. And again, I've got some breakpoints all established, and I'll make that window go away real quick because I don't need to see that. And I want to get rid of my watch window, and I don't need autos either. So I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to go ahead and start processing through here. So the first thing I'm going to do is invoke Fuji SQL new, returning its own object, and of course I'm going to put out a message out to this command window here. I'll show you that real quick. Starting table create program. So I'll go ahead and start stepping through the rest of this, and I'm now into an instantiated object. I'm going to test my connection, and again I can look at my SQL state. Right now it says nothing. Now if I wanted to go ahead and keep an eye on this, I can go ahead and add a quick watch, or I can basically do a regular watch to it. So I've got SQL state up here, and let me go ahead and pin that down so that you can actually see it change. I think it's kind of important for you to do that. We'll go ahead and check that. It comes back and says 01000. Okay, it says here is this test is if SQL state is not all zeros or not 01000, then display error on connect. Well, I know that my connection is good because that will pass. So again, I can go ahead and step through that, and now it says drop table. The assumption in this program is that the table already exists. If I say drop table and there's no table there, it's not going to cause a problem. So I'll go ahead and run this, and everything is fine. Now I'll go through my table definition. So I move table def, and if you go through and look at this, I'll highlight table def and I'll expand this. Notice here is all of the DDL that's necessary in order to go ahead and create my particular table. So I'm going to move all of this to SQL statement, and then I'll do a prepare my statement, and I'll step through that, and again we'll test to see if that was successful. And apparently it was. So let's stop right here and go out and see if I actually have a table in my Server Explorer. So I'll come out here, and one of the things that I'll need to do is refresh. So I'll highlight that and just click on refresh, and apparently I don't have anything just yet, so we'll go back out here and look again. So there's another execute that I have to get out through, and I should have gotten through this already, but I jumped the gun a little bit, so you'll have to excuse me. So that ends method FUJ create. So let me go back out here and see if I've got that table out here. Again, I'll refresh. Here it is. So again, keeping in mind that you got to watch what's going on and watch as you're debugging things. You sometimes can do like I just did and kind of jump the gun a little bit. Again, I noticed that everything is okay. If I want to go ahead and look at the properties of this table, you can see I've got properties of this. If I had more information, more detailed tables information out here, I could see that. If I go through and start looking at some of the column details, you can actually see over here in properties that all of these are changing. So my time, my varchar 1, varchar 2, etc. So we can easily see that this worked properly. Now, what I'm going to do is go through and step into the next procedure here, or the next method. Again, it will ask me a question, how many records do I want to insert? And again, it's going to come up here and bring up my command window. And of course, I have to give it a value. So I'll just go ahead and say 1,000 and press enter. And it will basically go ahead and do a test here. So if the number to load is 0, then it basically tells me I've got an error. I'll go ahead and test that. And now it's basically going to pick up the time. It'll tell you that I'm going to begin execution. And it's going to go ahead and connect to the database, check the connection, perform a load into the database, and populate it with data. So what you're seeing right here is I'm populating data into the various variables here, and then of course I'm going to go ahead and move that into the SQL database by doing this insert. So SQL insert into FUJ test, and of course I can see that. And of course, if I look at this, this is the actual variables for the database itself, and those are the declared variables out there. So again, I can go ahead and finish up. This one's going to calculate some times. It's going to go ahead and test whether the insert was correct and that sort of thing. And again, I'll just go ahead and click on continue. That will take me all the way through the load up of the database. If you look at this, it actually puts out what times there are. Now, don't pay any attention to the loading, the total time to load the record. We're actually going to run this again, and I'll show you how quick this will be at the end of this demo. So we'll look at the performance of SQL Server and NetCOBOL for .NET in just a little bit.